I know you're afraid of TikTok.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Hardly Qualified with Horace Gold. The rumors are true. I am Horace Gold. I want to say a quick thank you to everyone on TikTok who has been so supportive and encouraging with their DMs and their comments, encouraging me to start this podcast. It is an honor. I am just an actor from Los Angeles who some people like to listen to speak, and I'm running with it, baby. I'm running with it. Hardly Qualified is a podcast I've been wanting to start for a long time, where I get to talk about things that are funny or current or scary or serious with a nuanced and accountable lens with people that I find to be very interesting. And that leads me into today's guest. My very first guest is my mom, my Trump-supporting MAGA ass mom. I've posted somewhat of a series about this topic on my TikTok, and it's been really interesting to see the response and the DMs and people just letting me know that I'm not the only one experiencing having parents who I don't agree with politically. I am very, very left-leaning, and they are not. And we got to talk about it. This podcast episode is designed for basically three groups of people. I think the first would be people who are Democrats and have Republican or MAGA-leaning parents, families, partners, whomever they may be, and we're struck with how to interact with people that we love, but we don't agree with politically. And with such tenuous, intense times in the American political system, it's hard to not conflate someone's entire identity with how they vote and how do I hold space for this person who I love 98% of, but that 2% is a very strong 2%. And it can't define who they are, but I also can't ignore that we don't agree on this thing that's very important. So if that's you, this video is for you. The second group, for anyone who is somehow still an undecided voter, I don't get you, but whatever, you exist, I'm sure. And so if you are curious about what the Republican Party stands for or what the Democratic Party stands for, I think my mom and I both do a good job of presenting and also fact-checking each other's political stances. And the third group that this episode is designed for is honestly me. Like, I think that this conversation, although it's not a debate per se, it was very cathartic for me to be able to say some of this stuff to my mom's face. I, like many others in 2015/2016 when this was all going down, I sort of just pulled away from my mom and my dad. It was really nice to be able to have this discussion with my mom where we weren't fighting, but we were openly disagreeing. So I want to set some ground rules for this episode. Number one, look it up, okay? If me or my mother says anything that piques your interest, use your 10 fingers, maybe even a pinky, and Google it, right? Find out what we're saying. Neither of us are politicians. Neither of us work in DC. I am an actor in Los Angeles waiting out to find out if I booked some work. Until the meantime, I'm talking to you, right? So we're not experts in any of this. Again, hardly qualified. So Google. So often I feel like on the internet, people just open up their brains and allow information to just be put in there. Verify it for yourself. Number two, this is my real life mother with her real life ideologies, okay? So I understand the urge to tell someone that they're crazy or stupid or going to hell or whatever it may be. You're talking to my mommy who birthed me, and I love her, and I'm seeing her in November for Thanksgiving. So please just keep it cute, keep it cool. Don't send death threats to my mom, please. And then number three, just a little bit of house rules. I will be releasing 2 episodes per week. One is going to be an interview with someone that I find to be very interesting. And the second episode is going to be a solo episode of me just sort of pontificating life and whatever I'm going through at the moment and finding nuance and hot takes and doing what I do. So if any of that interests you, please subscribe to this channel, follow the podcast wherever you listen, and check out my personal social medias that will be listed in the bio. Also, it's tough to say this without it sounding rude, but the Republican Party, in my opinion, has been riddled with conspiracy theories. So unfortunately, there were some conspiracy theories that were brought up from my mom that I couldn't fact check in real time because I was like, girl, I don't know what you're talking about because that didn't happen. So what I did was I edited some fact checks that you'll see on YouTube. And if you're listening in your car, Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen, you'll be hearing a little jingle that sounds like this. Fact check. Whenever there's something that should be fact checked. And then if you're watching this video on YouTube, hello, I am not going to interrupt the audio of the conversation, and rather I'm just going to be inserting the real fact over the screen so that you can really see in real time what's happening and what the truth is. And I've also listed all of the resources that I got all of these fact checks from in the description below. And now that we've done all the brunt work of what I have to do, because this is my first podcast episode ever, this is the conversation with my mom. I really hope you enjoy. Mwah. Guys, this is my mom.
Hello.
We did it. This is Renee. Renee, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Ooh, should I say that I'm going to have a birthday?
Say you're
I'm going to be 66 years old in a couple of days. Married for 44 years, 6 kids, 2 boys, 4 girls. My boys are my young men are my bookends. The girls are obviously in the middle. I homeschooled them until they came of age. The girls went into middle school, 7th, 8th grade, and the boys went in around
high school, 8th and 9th grade. I think Jason and I both went in. Yeah.
And then, so when the homeschooling thing, they didn't quite. We live in South LA. I don't know if I should tell them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm open.
So we live in South LA. We looked at the school system, and that's really where my passion lies. My passion lies with the school system.
She said, "You bitches will not be of the hood." She said, "Not on my watch."
No, you will not be. You're going to be educated. I don't care where you live. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you work at McDonald's, but I want you to be able to own a McDonald's. And that's the thing.
Excellence was what was like ingrained to us from the jump.
Right.
What is your story? So I know, but like New Yorker, actor, let's talk about who you are as a person.
Sure. So grew up in the South Bronx at about, I don't know, ever since I was a little kid, like 5 or 6 years old, I would sing. I'd grab a pencil, stand, all the kids, everybody else was outside and they'd be playing and I'd be singing. So when I finally got 15, 16 years old, there was a contest called the Hal Jackson U.S. Miss Talented Teen Contest. It was in a magazine. I filled it out. I got picked and I went down, auditioned. They called me back and I eventually went through the pageant process, won the pageant. One of the judges was Rihanna.
Your agent.
Yeah, she became my manager. And she turned me on to a bunch of agents. And then from there at 16, I did a bunch of commercials. As soon as I turned 18, she said, I want you to head to California because you're young enough. You look young enough to pass as a 15, 16-year-old, but you're old enough to be legal in California. Got here, got some work. So if you went into IMDb under Renee Brown, you'll see some of my work. At that time, I had only known famous people. And when I had only known the famous people, and one of them, being a Soul Train dancer, he invited me to church.
How old were you at this point?
I was 18, about to turn 19.
So you
September-ish, October.
So
around.
turning 19.
Turning 19.
And you were still working as an actor
when
you first started.
I was. I did, there was a bunch of black sitcoms in the 70s.
The Jeffersons.
Good Times.
Were you a guest star or a series regular on
I was
The
a
Jeffersons?
guest star.
Like a recurring guest star?
No. I was just a guest star on the sitcoms, but then there was a movie called Love Is Not Enough. And with Love Is Not Enough, they turned that into a series called Harrison Company. The only thing about Harrison Company is that there was a fellow named Fred Silverman. He was in charge of NBC. He put Harrison Company upside of really popular story.
Mork and Mindy, right? Yeah.
Right. He put it up against Mork and Mindy. And so we only filmed 4 shows. And, I watched Mork and Mindy. I didn't even watch my own show. So anyway.
And for those of you who don't know, Mork and Mindy was like Robin Williams' first big show. So like that's who she was competing up against.
It was amazing. It was an amazing show. Yeah. Ours was amazing too. And ours was a forerunner because we came before Bill Cosby's show.
Wow.
Right.
So you paved the way for Raven Simone to have a career. So something Raven, if you're watching this, you're welcome.
So we did that. I did that show. It didn't get picked up after the 4 episodes because Mork and Mindy was so popular, and so we got cut. But that's okay. And then after that, a friend from Soul Train Dancer, he invited me to church. I went to church with him, and I became a Christian. Had to do some self-reflection and decided that show business wasn't for me. Met my husband at church.
Dad, love you.
Yeah. And got married, and 6 kids later, homeschool kids later, here we are.
So, question about that church. Because the children of the churchgoers that you guys were all involved in, we all call that a cult.
Well,
so what are your thoughts on that specific? Because this is FBT, right?
Right, but you weren't born.
I wasn't born.
Right.
But all of your spawns, we all refer to that. So like the not joke, but like the narrative amongst the children is that you and Dad met in a cult. So what would you like, particularly with that church, like how do you think that being that was your first spiritual experience, how do you think that affected your relationship moving forward with religion?
I have mixed feelings about it. I think, first of all, that I had my own personal conversion experience, and nothing can ever take that experience away from me. I met my husband there. I met lifelong friends there. So some of the things, Jesus is wonderful. People sometimes aren't. People sometimes are jerks. And so I have to take the good with the bad. I can't condemn it and say all of it was bad, and I can't say all of it was good. To say all of it was good is not true.
Totally.
And that's why we're not there anymore. Because at a certain point, I compared what man was doing compared to what the Bible was saying and said, wait, these are 2 different things. And so because they're 2 different things, I have to make a choice.
Yeah, that's been my personal issue with religion is like love Jesus, hate Christians. I experienced a lot of hypocrisy in the church we grew up in. talked about like someone beating his wife and then being the worship leader the next Sunday. And we just like turned a blind eye.
Yeah.
But then I was getting the message of like, well, you're gay, so you're going to hell.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, how are these the same thing? How are these the same?
And that's why we're not in that church.
Right.
Because,
right.
The Bible says one thing and you're doing, well, I should do it the other way.
Right.
The Bible says one thing and you're doing another. And so for us, it was just like, no.
And so church led into Dad. Where did politics come into the scene for you?
Oh, politics came in way before Dad. Okay, so now I'm just gonna throw some numbers out there. And this, you remember, this is in the 70s and 80s, so this is a boatload of money at the time. The basic minimum for a TV show at that time was $3,500 a week, right? That was base minimum, and then if the contract went up, if the show got picked up, made $3,500 a week in the 70s. That's a lot of money for a teenager. And me not knowing anything. Well, remember, I come from the South Bronx, don't know anything about money. Well, very little. My dad was really good about, some things regarding money. So I knew a little bit. $3,500, don't have any kind of tax shelter set up, none of that kind of stuff. So government came along and lopped off half of it, 50%, right? No tax shelters, no nothing, right? So, okay. And then my agent took 10%. Then my manager took 15%. By the time I got the check, it was $900. Now, for a teenager in the 70s and 80s, making $900 a week was a lot of money. But I'm looking at $3,500 going, dang, where'd my money go? And then now, where does it go? So then I started to do investigating, and then I was like, wait, my taxes are going where? And then you start looking around going, your taxes are going to.
And who was the president at this time?
It was Jimmy Carter.
Okay.
It was Jimmy Carter.
And had you voted for Jimmy Carter?
I voted for Jimmy Carter. So now the crazy thing about Jimmy Carter was because I was a Christian, I had an affinity to Jimmy Carter because and my family was Democrats. Everybody is just, your families are born a Democrat. That's it. There's history with that too because I asked my father about my grandpa. I have this right?
Yeah, I think you're doing great.
I asked my father about my grandpa. So, and remember, Tricky Dick, Richard Nixon was in office around that time. So my dad and I would talk about politics a little bit because I would always see him read the newspaper. What's up with the news? So on and so forth. And this was the time that Nixon was about to be ousted, right? And then you got Jimmy Carter coming up. So I asked my dad about my grandpa. My grandpa was a Republican. And I was like, what? I thought Republicans were, But he said that the old-time blacks were Republicans because of Lincoln. Because Lincoln freed the slaves. And hold on. Lincoln freed the slaves, and that was a perception with black people. And so then Kennedy came along, then people switched, and the New Deal and all that. Then the blacks switched over and became Democrats. So my whole family was Democrats, but not with any. To me, there was no explanation for why we were Democrats. We just were. That's what you were. But when I got taxed, I was like, wait a minute, where's all the money going and so forth? But when Carter was in office, I voted for him because I was a Democrat and he was a Christian. So I had double affinity.
I also just have to interject because I know someone listening is screaming in their car saying, there was a party switch. There was a party switch. So I do just want to acknowledge that there was a party switch after Lincoln was a Republican. And that was why Republicans take a lot of credit for freeing the slaves, because the man who was a Republican was what we would now call the party Democrats. I just want that to be on the record, that I know that we see each other. Keep going. We see each other, Mom. Not you, but me and them.
Yeah.
I'm talking to them.
And I have to go like this.
That's just
we can talk about that.
There's not a debate, but I just want to like know.
At a different time. So anyway,
it was a party sweat.
So anyway, so I voted for Carter the first time, and then we had the Iran situation where they came and they took the hostages, and that's when I first started watching Nightline with Ted Koppel, and I watched it, and I was actually working in San Francisco. I was still acting. They would fly me from Los Angeles to San Francisco. I would sit down and I would watch Nightline. When they first took the hostages, that was a really big deal for them to do that. So now America's locked in, and we're wondering, Mr. President, what are you going to do? And he didn't do anything. It was weak negotiations and so on and so forth. So anyway, another election. This is 79.
And I was just going to ask, for timeline purposes, you're still not in the church at this time, right?
I'm in the first church.
So you basically became a Republican first and then a Christian, would you say?
No.
You became a Christian first and then a Republican. Okay.
Right. So
because I do think that's important, because I was curious if you were sort of having this like political reckoning essentially alone, but no, you were in the church.
I was in the church. I was a Democrat, hoping. Okay, so I don't remember when I actually. Oh, I know what happened. Voted for Carter, hoping that Reagan would win. When Reagan won, that's when I switched parties.
It's like flipping a coin, right? Like you flip a coin knowing that you want the coin to end a certain way, you know, and that really tells you what you wanted by like being like, I hope it ends on heads, you know what I mean? Like that's really when it reveals itself. And that's what happened, what you're saying with Reagan.
Right. You know what? Then I vowed to myself I'd never do that again. So when you vote for Carter hoping Reagan would win, I said, I have to be true to myself no matter what my family thinks.
Skipping ahead, have you ever voted for a Republican president that you weren't 100% about, that you would have been okay with the Democrat winning?
No, because and then I started looking at the Republican platform and what the Republican platform started, and that, you know, we can talk about Trump and why I'm a MAGA Trump supporter and all that, because I'm not looking at the man so much, because what I noticed or what I observed is that the people aren't perfect. The candidates are not always going to be perfect. Bush wasn't perfect. This one wasn't perfect, and so forth. So
do you think the policies are perfect too?
Not perfect, but more akin to my life's point of view. So when you talk about general things like abortion, when you talk about freedom period, freedom to speak, freedom of choice in that where to go to school, freedom of association, those sorts of things, the Republican Party seemed to line up more closely to my worldview. Back then and
still now.
And still now.
And so do you feel that you've ever deviated away from alignment with, or not deviated, but or rather, do you think the Republican Party has deviated from you?
Compared to,
just in general, just in the last 40 years of voting Republican.
So there was a time when George W., the first HW, right? When HW came on the scene after Reagan, I looked at him and I looked at a fellow named Ross Perot. So there was three people running at the time. It was George H.W. Bush, there was Ross Perot, and there was Bill Clinton. I didn't like HW. Right? I didn't like the vice president. I liked Ross Perot. So if there was any kind of a bend, it was that time, because that's who I voted for.
I'm not familiar with Ross Perot. Was he running Democrat?
He was independent.
Okay.
He was independent.
So you believe in the third party, potentially?
Potentially. And so I voted third party. But what ended up happening is it split the vote between, because he took votes away from HW, and then Bill Clinton won. So Bill Clinton won with 41% of the vote.
Do you regret voting for Perot because Clinton got the win?
Yeah.
So
you know what? I have mixed feelings about it, only because I agreed with Ross Perot. So I can't say I would go with George Bush. If I had the choice all over again, I still would vote. You know, like people still vote for Bernie no matter what. That's how I felt about Ross Perot. I would still vote for him again.
So this leads me to a question from Maddie. What's up, Maddie, on TikTok? Do either of us find that the two political parties in the U.S. are limiting when it comes to discussing and assuming morals and values/politics?
Yes, but the challenge with that, what I find with that, is that if you have three parties, if you have four parties, you're now splintering down the voices, if you will. So what ends up happening is like what happened in the situation with Clinton. 40% of the country voted for Clinton, and the 60 didn't. So that's because we have three parties. So if you sit and you say, okay, now we're going to have three parties, and only like one, and you have the same scenario that happens again, most of the country didn't vote for the president. And so then now you're running into, oh wow, a lot of the majority's voices are not being heard. So that's why two-party, and I say that with hesitancy, two-party works because you have to choose a side. And so can I talk about Trump?
Well, hold on, because I'm going to answer the question as well. I feel that the two-party system, I don't realistically see it going anywhere. But I do think that the two-party system is exactly why we are, as a country, so in the hands of lobbying, and why lobbying is even an industry is just so wrong to me. I do not think that we should be like bartering money for political power. I think that that's insane, and it happens on both sides of the coin. And I think that when the structure is essentially toggling back and forth every 4 to 8 years, it allows and makes that perfect space for someone to like sneak up and be like, hey, it's like, can I like get it? You know what I mean? Like that, like backdoor shit really only happens. I think if there were 4, 5, 6 different political options, the ability to get in there and like manipulate the system would be a lot less viable and a lot less realistic, in my opinion, because that lobbying, I don't know if it would have as much power because it would be more spread out. But if you successfully lobby, you have half the country in your pocket. Right. But if however many voters in America felt equally represented, I don't think that lobbying would be as much of a industry, because you wouldn't have that much political power over that many people at one time, because you wouldn't be able to lobby to the socialists and the communists and the this and the, if we were all actually represented in how we felt politically, we wouldn't see this business that is built off of the backs of that many people being in one bucket.
But I think that lobbying may not always lead to votes. When you take the two-party system and you break it into 3, and you break it into 4, and you break it into 5, and now you've got the lobbying group going out and reaching out to all of them. So say this one wins, but this party, whatever you want to call it, the Green Party or whatever it is, because there really are other parties
Hate
out
the Green
there.
Party, losers.
Okay.
Hate them.
But anyway, so if you go to the Green Party, they would win, and you had like these 5 viable parties. If the Green Party won with 23 or 25 or 30% of the vote, and these guys got whatever the rest of it is, you're having that leadership now run the country, and these other ones are dissatisfied. And so I'm not sure. So something.
And I guess I'm not even really talking about the presidential election when I talk about like the importance of the two-party system being split up. I'm talking about like tobacco lobbying. These big companies that are coming in and essentially buying support. I think if we were all split up and a lot less money and a lot less people were congregated into one place, these companies wouldn't be able to come in and like buy politics.
So then you need ethical politicians to set up laws and rules and guardrails that says none of this to lobbyists. That's what you need. But the problem and the challenge is everything in the United States is run by money. Mm-hmm. And so because it's run by money, you can't raise your candidacy without the money. So, a lobbyist will come along and say, hey, if you agree with me, I'll give you $1 million, X amount of dollars to further your campaign. So they're really honest people, I think, out there who really want to do well by the United States. I think all of us love our country. I think they're really good candidates out there, but it's just that when they say, I won't take money from this lobby or that, their candidacy goes but so far, and then they drop off. So then you have to whore yourself out.
Mm-hmm.
You have to whore yourself out to move ahead. Mm-hmm. And then the person that comes in with the idealistic ideas ends up in the end being compromised, because now they're beholden to the big pharma, big ag.
Right.
And what ends up happening is somebody like RFK. I actually got to hear him speak. I got to hear Tucker. I went to a Tucker birthday to me. Happy birthday to me.
MAGA. The fact that she spent her birthday with fucking Tucker Carlson. And it was like, this is a gift.
Wait.
Oh my God.
I know. I bought that gift for me. I went to see Tucker. I went to see Tucker Carlson, Vivek Ramaswamy. Yay, Vivek. I think he's great.
I wasn't lying when I said she was MAGA.
Wait. And then RFK came out, and RFK was... Shut up. RFK was the guest speaker. Now, RFK...
Nightmare blunt rotation, by the way. Nightmare blunt rotation.
Stop. RFK actually is one of the ones that would speak out against big ag and big pharma. So what they do to me, in my opinion, is that they make us just sick enough with their foods to give us the medicine. Right? What does that mean?
I'm in agreement with you on that one.
And RFK comes out and RFK says, no, that's wrong. If you're not RFK with the Kennedy money, you don't have the profile. He has the profile, he has the money, and then he has the profile of the name Kennedy to get it out there. But even then, he's called a kook or this or that. And the Dems wouldn't even let him on the ballot on some of these things too, so that the voices like his could be heard. And that kind of stuff is very upsetting.
Well, so I'm interested now because you, and we will be getting into Trump now. I didn't know that your heart sort of was with the idea of big pharma, big food, big vegetable poisoning us with like American agriculture, right? So like it's interesting to think about that, then to have your president stop healthcare for people with pre-existing conditions. I find that to be an interesting duality where you can acknowledge that people are getting sick by the food, but you vote for a man who was looking to like cut Medicare for people with pre-existing conditions. So like how do you sit in the middle of that, sort of opposing?
So as I understand, his last position on that is that he's not interested in cutting Medicaid. Now we can argue about it.
He changes his mind all the time.
Okay, so all right.
But I'm talking about when he was the president. He wasn't extremely careful and mindful of people who had pre-existing conditions. So it's interesting that you are mindful that a lot of those conditions come from the food, which I agree with, but then vote for a man who doesn't really care that much about that.
Yeah, and I would say that he does care, and so I don't know all of his full positions on that, so I can't really speak on that. But what I can say about the Biden-Harris or Harris-Biden position, when you say to me, I'm going to cap things at $35 a month or whatever it is, to me that's not solving the problem. To me, I want somebody who's going to acknowledge and solve the problem. So the fact that RFK decided that he would throw his hat and his lot in with Trump, it speaks to me because he's an RFK to me is not RFK Jr. is not the one to be played with. So for him to be mindful enough to say I'm going to go with Trump after doing his due diligence, because he doesn't do anything haphazardly, he's a really sharp lawyer, really. So for him to throw his hat in with Trump speaks to me versus somebody who says I'm going to cap it at $35, not solve the problem. And I think that RFK wants to solve the problem.
But wait, I also want to just because
so you understand my point?
I hear your point.
Okay.
But didn't RFK ask to be a part of Kamala's cabinet and she said no, and that's when RFK endorsed Trump? He wasn't like Trumpy. He was like, whoever gives me the job first, I'll endorse you. And she's like, I'm good. And that's when he went to Trump. So I don't think he's as like full-hearted behind Donald Trump, because if he truly was, he wouldn't have been running in the first place.
And I think that the reason that he went, because he's a Democrat. So because he was a Democrat, he went to Democrats first. He went to the like-minded. Like, if I want something passed, I'm not going to go to my enemy, and I put that in air quotes because I don't think we're enemies. I'm going to go to the party that I grew up in. You're talking about capping at $35 an hour. I want to solve the problem.
Have you ever had a problem in America that has been ever fully solved? Has anything ever been solved?
Not
so. No,
wait,
right?
Okay, wait. It can't, because each administration changes.
The expectation of they didn't solve it. I'm like, who has ever solved it all the way? I think I often hear a very inconsistent expectation from Republicans when speaking about Democrats and Democratic presidents, because there's this like, Kamala was VP, why didn't she get it done? It's like, when has there ever been a vice president that has ever really gotten anything done?
I can flip
like. But no one is ever like, where's Mike Pence? No one on the left was like, what? Where's Mike Pence? It's not, because we know that the VP is there when the president dies.
Yeah. So Mike Pence was there to deal with the COVID situation. So.
My point is that I think that the idea that them putting a cap on $30 insulin for seniors and veterans, we need to be able to acknowledge when a good thing is done without immediately just being like, well, why didn't you do more? And it's like, that is a never-ending game to play of like, why wasn't the problem solved? It's like, there's never actually been a problem solved, so why can't we give credit to, you know what I mean?
Because so then we can't, and then with that thinking, to me, you can't then ever ask for purists,
I don't think that people want purity. I think that there's a difference between purity and feeling particularly safe with the president, right? Like, and this actually leads me into a question that we're getting on TikTok. Renee is saying, I would love to know, as a woman, how can she vote for somebody who's been found guilty of rape in civil court, has been on an Epstein flight list numerous times, and has bragged about assaulting women?
Okay, so he wasn't found guilty of rape. He was found guilty.
Eugene Carroll.
As far as I know, he wasn't found guilty.
Let's look this up right now. A jury verdict in May 2023 found Trump liable for sexually abusing and defaming Carroll. As far as the documents will say, that's a guilty verdict. Okay. So for all intents and purposes.
So let's look up Tara Reid.
Where are we going with this? Because I want to just make sure we're not deviating from the question. How do you as a woman feel? What are your thoughts on that before we look up Tara Reid?
Oh, okay. So my thoughts on that is that all of them do it. It sounds crude and it sounds harsh to say. If you want to like call out Trump, you need to call out.
Also, allegedly. I'm not trying to get sued by Joe Biden in case that's not true. I've never heard of that before. And also, do you think Barack Obama would have survived 8 years in office as the first black president? You can't say they all do it, because they didn't all do it.
Okay.
And, and definitely not to that extent, and not to that extent, especially with multiple cases and being impeached. It would be irresponsible to conflate his actions with anyone else. But for answering this question now.
And so the second one is the
Epstein's flight list. He's seen in multiple photos of Jeffrey Epstein, P. Diddy's. Now they're all these guys. It's like birds of a feather. These guys all hang out together multiple times over multiple years. Like, this wasn't like an individual isolated incident, right? And has, as I said earlier, bragged about about assaulting women, right? Like this guy's if you walk like a duck, talk like a duck, you probably raped a girl. How else do you sort of disregard proof?
And the reason is because I can't say all because that's hyperbolic, but a lot of the politicians do it. It's just that we don't know about it.
If it's because everyone else did it, does that make it okay?
No, it
that
doesn't.
Just because everyone else might have done something awful, you don't mind that someone else
it doesn't make it okay. But when you're asking me to make a choice between this one and that one, I have to then now default back and say, what are the policies that this guy is espousing versus that guy? What do the Republicans offer and what do the Democrats offer? When the Republicans offer pro-life, because look, Donald Trump is going to come and go. All these politicians are going to come and go. In 4 years, if Trump gets elected, he's only going to be in for 4 more years, and he will be, turn the page of history, and he'll be gone, and we'll be talking about J.D. Vance or this one or that one, whoever wants to emerge, Vivek or whoever. So then I have to look at, okay, so what are the qualities that line up with what I believe? And then I fall back on the Republican platform versus the Democratic platform.
And so I'm looking up this Tara Reid situation.
I heard her story. I heard her being interviewed by Larry Elder, and she had...
Immediately disregard. Next question. We have no legitimacy for Larry Elder. Goodbye.
Really?
Next question is, how do you feel...
Well, then you look it up for yourself.
I will.
Look up Tara,
We're
look up
not
Tara
doing
Reid.
Larry Elder on this. That man traumatized me. Larry Elder, Rush Limbaugh, rest in hell. Dr. Laura Schlesinger.
I love Rush.
Y'all ruined me. So we're going to move on. How do you feel that Donald Trump represents you as a person of color? And my further question, to that will be, how do you feel voting the same as the KKK?
I look at the policy, I look at the platform, the Republican platform versus the Democratic platform. Because what happens is, because it's a binary choice, you're asking me to vote for the man versus the other party. And for me, I look then again at the platform. And again, Donald Trump will come and go. And when Donald Trump was in office, he did cut taxes. He did do, X, Y, and Z, all the things. I look at the First Step Act. I looked at the people who worked for him. When I looked at the people...
How many of them endorse Harris now?
I don't know.
Most.
I don't know. Well, I don't know. I know that there are some black women and then women who support Donald Trump who don't get a voice, and it's really unfortunate that you don't get to hear what they have to say about him. You don't get to hear how he took the homeless people and said, "Okay, live in Trump Towers." You don't hear how Ice Cube called him before, when he was a Democrat. He was a boss, right? He's a boss.
When he filed for bankruptcy 4 times, he was a boss.
Yeah, he was a boss. Yeah, and he was like, Ice Cube said, everybody wants to be like Donald Trump. Why? Because he's a boss. He funded Jesse Jackson's campaigns, 2 of his campaigns twice, right? So
as a non-rich person of color, how do you feel represented by Donald Trump? Because I think money is a different set of. It changes your perspective on people.
Sure. As a non-rich person, he cut taxes, and so when he cut,
you don't think that was Barack Obama previously?
No.
Even though that's how policy works, where you inherit the economy from the last president? And now taxes are higher because we're under Trump's tax line?
No, because what happened was, and I don't remember who but the reporter said to Barack Obama, "Do you realize that when you keep raising taxes that it's going to bring in less income?" And he said, "I know, but we know what to do best for the people." So Barack Obama admitted that his policy raised taxes. When Trump got in there, cut at the economy.
Raised taxes from the previous administration, but we should look at facts on this before. I want to get back to the question.
Okay.
How do you feel having things in common politically with the KKK? How does that make you feel?
With the KKK. Now, we're American, right? And so because we're all Americans, the KKK can decide who they want to vote for, and I can decide who I want to vote for. So people who are opposed can vote for the same person for different reasons.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess I think of it as you're an average of the 5 people closest to you, and I think like if I were at a Harris rally, I would probably have more in common outside of my political ideology with the people that are around me. I would feel safer in ways that are not just how I vote protecting me. I would feel that these people see the world the same way as me. Versus being a black person at a Trump rally, the moment you step out of that safe space, I don't know that those people would treat you the same. If you weren't talking about politics. It seems as though the idea that outside of the umbrella of Trumpness, a lot of those people would prefer you were dead.
Really?
David Duke.
Oh, you're talking about the KKK.
The Grand Master was the Grand Wizard of. I would assume he would want you dead.
Yeah, I think the KKK represents that. They want separatism. They want black people dead. They want not just black people other than the white Aryan race dead. Right. But how many of those people are out there really in the party when you look at 15, 20,000?
Enough.
15 or 20,000, not even enough to fill a baseball stadium.
That drop in the bucket for me is like one drop too many. I think I could never feel that I was in the right place if I was looking at who my contemporaries were. Yeah. That would give me pause to be like, why the fuck am I here?
Yeah, but
like,
and
that's crazy. Yeah. You have like J.D. Vance calling Haitians from Haïtia. You know what I mean? Like talking about wanting to just run like deportations on people without any verification of who they are. I'm like, that is just xenophobia. That is like literally just another version of like Nazi Germany, right? Like going through and just checking who's a Jew and who's not, who's American, who's not. Like there's no way to really do that. Yeah. And so to feel that that's
I think
a
Homeland
part of
Security knows who's come through the border, and I think they know exactly where to get these people from who came in the country illegally, and they'll do what they do.
That's interesting because I feel like I hear the Republicans say that Kamala Harris was the border czar and she let a bunch of people in the country that no one knows who they are. And so now to hear that you think that Homeland Security does know who these people are is an interesting, where I'm like, which one is it?
And the interest in, people say that illegal immigrants are ushered into the country freely, but they're being flown some places. They're being flown. Now the Haitians came in under I think it was the TTP program. They were given blanket amnesty by Kamala Harris, so they're here legally for a certain.
Which is how this country was built, and it's also interesting to me because both of their wives are immigrants. So to have this like xenophobe,
but legal immigrants,
right? So the Haitians are illegal immigrants as well
for a short time. Right.
So was Melania and so was Usha.
But then you have the other 20 million or however tens of millions that cross illegally. But anyway.
And my hot take is that a lot more illegal immigrants are white than people think they are. Go up and down Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood, you will find an illegal immigrant. You just won't notice because they're Russian.
Right.
There's a lot of illegal immigrants in this country who don't look like one, and no one checks.
Which is very scary.
And no one checks. So this country, this is all, that's why the xenophobia is actually quite racist, because if we were really looking at who were the illegal immigrants, we would be looking at people of all races, not just the brown ones.
Right. And who's saying that they'll only deport the brown ones? They're saying
Donald Trump.
No. They're saying
Mexico. He literally says they're giving us our worst. They're asylums. It's literally Donald Trump wanting to build the wall exclusively at Mexico. But I'm quoting the man. I'm quoting the man. Yeah. He literally wants to exclusively build the wall at Mexico, but he's doing nothing to check. I've never ever heard the man talk about Eastern European immigration. I've never heard him talk about any other race other than brown people and now black people.
I think it's coming.
You think it's coming 47 days before the election?
Oh, no, wait, let him get in office. And then
I don't trust, no.
Okay,
next question is, what fruits of the Spirit do you believe that Donald Trump exemplifies?
I don't know. I don't think Donald Trump is a Christian. So I don't
think
So I don't think he has the fruit of the Spirit. I don't want to fall back into that trap because I did that with Jimmy Carter. When I went to, I thought Jimmy Carter is a great Christian. He's going to run the country. Everything is going to be great. It was horrible. And none of the presidents to me.
Question now.
Okay.
That's interesting. So, okay, that's great to know. If you don't think that any of the presidents are Christian,
I thought Carter,
for all intents and purposes, if you don't believe that a lot of the presidents are Christian.
I think Reagan may have been.
Murdered gay people, not a Christian. If you think that the presidents are not Christian, why do you believe that we should be living under Christian law? And if
I don't think that we should be living.
Then why should abortion be illegal?
I personally, the reason I think abortion should be illegal is because abortion kills babies. I personally believe that abortion is murder. Now, in America, what I fight for is what we have now. We have a union of states. We are the United States of America. So it's because we're the United States of America, the power lies with each state for the citizenry to vote for what they want in that particular state. Just like we as a national, and when the United States comes together and we vote for our president, we vote for our federal officials.
Forgive the sirens.
When we vote for our federal officials, we're voting on a national scale and all, then we vote and so on and so forth, our process, right? Mm-hmm. But in the states, if a group of people in Utah, just Utah, a bunch of Mormons, and I will assume that they're pro-life. So I'm just going to make a generalization on them. If all those people in Utah say we want abortion to be illegal, they have the right to, the citizenry gets to speak on what's happening in their states. It's called states' rights for a reason. The people get to vote. And so what ends up happening is when you have the Supreme Court take away that, now you're having 9 people take away the voice of all the people. So when you keep it states' rights, then the citizenry has a voice. So in California, abortion will not be illegal because there's people like me that will vote no against, vote against abortion, but there's a bunch of people, the majority will vote for it. So then me as a person, as a Christian person, I will have to say, I accept it or I move.
Regarding that, all of what you just said, none of that sounds like freedom. So it's interesting to me because what you're asking for and advocating for is the ability to deny someone else's freedom who wants to make a choice that you won't make for yourself. You're saying that Utah gets to decide that in our state you can't do this thing.
Because the people voted for it.
Because the majority of people voted for it. Right. But what that's doing is not giving anyone anything. All it's doing is taking away the ability to do it literally is.
I
There's
disagree.
not really Christians feel persecuted when people who are not Christian don't behave in Christian laws. No one is doing anything to you personally by getting an abortion. Your freedom was never in question, but everyone else's is.
Okay, so I'm gonna swap out baby and I'm gonna put in black slave. And if I swap out baby and put in black slave, based on what you're saying, then and that's the same argument that the Southerners had.
I think slavery should be abolished in all 50 states.
Yeah, and
I don't think states should have rights where you can own slaves in some states and you can in others. I think slavery should be abolished in all states. Okay. I don't believe in states' rights.
But what happened with the slaves in the slave states that owned slaves, they did the same thing about with abortion. They were like, when Christians came along and said, you cannot kill a slave. The slave is a person. The slave master said the same thing you said. The slave master would come along and say, wait a minute, you can't tell me what to do with my slave. It's my slave. I can do whatever I want. If I want to kill my slave, if I want to starve my slave, if I want to do whatever I want with my slave, it's my right. It's my property.
We are not conflating an unborn fetus to a Black American slave.
I am.
And it's interesting because I think this gets into the pro-life versus pro-birth debate. I was talking about this with Dad actually the other day. Where like a fetus, if you're pregnant, congratulations. I hope your baby carries full to term. I hope that baby's loved and held and cherished in life. So a fetus is essentially a really big hope that it turns out as we can assume that it will be. Because we all know that at the very last minute, there can be complications right at the end. Things might happen. You hope and you assume, right? That's why we go and get prenatal testing and we check in and we do ultrasounds to check on the status of the baby because things can go very wrong very quickly, right? Mm-hmm. So until that baby is out of the womb and is now its own person with its own developed organs sitting in front of us that I can look at and see, that fetus is essentially a developmental idea. It is, because there's no guarantee because when it's born. To grant this, for all intents and purposes, this idea with full human rights, but it is an idea because there's no real proof, in fact, 100% that this person will develop.
You had a heartbeat.
We have no, but there.
You had a heartbeat.
Tell me that there's not been babies who have had heart.
Moves.
But tell me that there haven't been.
Hear.
Great, all those things can happen, and those babies can still die.
Right.
So to grant this idea full autonomy that a lived human slave who has been taken and moved to a different country, to say that this thing that I cannot see, feel, touch, hold you can't tell, it's not a real thing. So to say that it is the same as this disenfranchised, enslaved human being, I think is really disrespectful. And I don't think that most people are like, 8 months, I'm kind of over being pregnant, I'm just gonna get an abortion. Like, people don't really do that. For a woman to feel that she cannot carry a baby and that it's not going to work out. Her husband dies. She doesn't want to be a single parent. She realizes that there's complications that are happening. Whatever might happen that would justify a woman getting an abortion, that to me is not murder. Because until I am looking at the baby in this dimension, in this real world, the person who gets the precedent is the person that I'm looking at. And I think that for a group of religious people to say your views don't align with mine, therefore you can't do what you want with your body, you cannot tell me and convince me that that is freedom.
The first thought is like, say if you get into a car accident, when a pregnant woman gets into a car accident and she and the fetus is killed, they call it double homicide. It's double homicide. Why? Because the baby's still in utero. Which is, if she got out of the car, it would just be one body, but she would have her and the baby, but the person would still be charged with 2 homicides, right? So somewhere inherently in the law, that baby in utero is counted as a person. I really do kind of want to get back to the voice thing, like the states' rights thing. I still think that people, like, it's not always all Christians that think abortion is murder. There's some people out there, not a lot of people, but a bunch of people that think, and it's primarily driven by religious people, Catholics, Christians, Muslims, Orthodox Jewish people. We all believe the same things. And so when we all congregate and gather together and we all vote in whatever states we're in, I think our voice, the reason that we have states' rights is so that our voices can be heard. Now, if there's a minority in there, should our voices be silenced because of the minority? If the minority doesn't like it, like it's happening in California, we feel like our voices are not being heard under Gavin Newsom. So because our voices are not being heard by Gavin Newsom, we've lost 700,000 people. They've probably now 800,000 people have left the state because we want to go to where our voices are going to be heard.
That leads us into a good question of, like, how do you feel about, again, and this was kind of what I was getting to with pro-life and pro-birth. I feel like Republicans are pro-birth. I feel like Republicans don't take a ton of action in protecting the real lives of children. Like once the mother has
Catholics for life. I mean, I've demonstrated in
right.
abortion clinic.
But I think that's a pro-birth idea.
But after
my question is about the idea of pro-life.
I was talking at him.
Right.
I need to listen.
Like, I feel like there's a difference between having a baby and raising a baby. And once we're talking about raising babies and protecting babies, Republicans sort of fall off, and a lot of those answers end up being thoughts and prayers. So if you can't tell, my question is about gun control. We do not protect children in school. I will be making a video about the crisis in boys' mental health because that is absolutely happening right now.
It is.
And we are not talking about it enough. But in the meantime, where do you feel like the Republican Party can, or do you even think the Republican Party should be doing more to mitigate this epidemic?
Well, first of all, Second Amendment is not going to go away. And so since it's not going away, so now you have to go then deeper into it. So all these guns are either bought legally or illegally. So since the Second Amendment is not going to go away, then you have to say, okay, so what's the next? Like, I would do it like this. So the Second Amendment's not here, so now what do? You put out a bunch of the laws to say felons can't have guns. That guy was in the bushes with Trump, he shouldn't have had a gun, and so they charged him for that, or they're holding him for that. It has to go now to, and then the dumbola that got the gun for his son that shot up the school, he's rightfully charged because he should not have given his son, especially when they had known ahead of time, a year before, that this kid had issues and problems. So then now you have to look back at families, and you have to look at family units. And to me, what's missing is the family unity. Like, I know that because whatever our political differences are, I know that I'm really trusting that my children are sane enough not to go out and grab a gun and blow somebody's head off or do anything goofy. Why? Because we have the familial relationship to talk and to deal with whatever angst or whatever problems are going on. And I think the boys, my heart goes out to children. My bugaboo is education and family relationships. And I think that boys are truly suffering because there's no outlet for them. Boys'
emotions aren't validated.
Right. And so what happens is then boys act out. So we're taking a tree log, not even a baseball bat, but a tree log, and trying to swat a mosquito. And by getting rid of all of this, and Second Amendment, and we're trying to use a big tree log to whack a small problem, and not a small problem, but a familial problem. Am I making myself clear?
Yeah.
Now, if people don't follow the laws, what, like a good guy? I mean, Dad's a former police officer, so it's just the assumption that we have guns. You grew up with guns in the house, right? So since you grew up with guns in the house, and I
never knew where they were, still don't.
Right, still don't. But then there are times when we take you out, talk about gun safety, take you to the range and show you how to shoot, how to handle, and so on. And that's what the NRA does. They have classes on that. Actually, Dad goes to the range that's owned by a black man in Burbank.
Period.
But anyway, I just think that the problem needs to come down from here. It's not a national problem.
Do you think Republicans are doing enough to?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
You think that saying thoughts and prayers is enough to help.
What are they going to do? Are they going to
crisis.
march into your house? Are they going to march into this crazy kid's house and say, yeah, let me?
Do you think that people should? You think that citizens should be allowed to have AR-15s?
Yes. Yes.
Really?
Yeah. So it goes back to what's happening in your home. Take care of your home.
I think we've seen that method does not work. And
So-
that this
so then
method
that
has
means-
been
so
that
then
it
that
has
means-
been
so then that
said
means-
about this since the Aurora shooting. Guns aren't shooting people; people are killing people, and it's like, yeah, we get how many more kids need to die.
Right. So you're saying that the family unit then is invalidated. We shouldn't have families. So
I don't
we-
think no. I don't think that
okay.
anyone said that.
Because that's what I'm saying.
No,
I'm
no, no,
saying
no, no.
that-
I'm saying that the idea of handle it on your own is not enough. Handle it at home is not enough
Really?
because it's not working. Of course, it's not enough.
It's not happening. That's the thing.
And
so
so-
how's the government going to go into a home and nurture the kids
Because
so that
I-
they're
I
not
think
crazy?
that
You
they're-
already said that the boys aren't.
The boys, yeah, absolutely. The boys are not okay, which means that we should be doing everything in our power to make sure that those boys who are not well are not getting their hands on guns.
yeah,
Is
and I
that-
think it needs to go deeper than that. I think that it's not that they should not get guns because they're going to get knives or whatever. I think that the
You're
boys
not gonna
need-
kill 15
they're-
people with a
they're-
knife.
right? But they need to be healed. They need to.
And in the
be healed.
meantime, we need to get the guns out of their hands. I agree.
So-
I agree with the
okay,
healing.
all right.
I think we've lost the privilege of having guns recreationally
And
because
so-
too many kids are getting their hands on them, and I'm glad that parents are getting charged for this. But I think that we also need to take it a step further because there's no reason.
What's
there's
the
no
step further? What's
there's
the step?
there's no I was just gonna say there's no functional reason that any citizen needs to have their hands on an AR-15. Do you think that Donald Trump has helped the Republican Party? Because we have to acknowledge that it wasn't always like this.
Right.
And it wasn't really like this
Right.
until Donald Trump.
Right.
Barack Obama and Mitt Romney were not doing this.
I think the two different thoughts. Well, first of all, I just want to say something about Donald Trump. Donald Trump, the difference between Donald Trump and the people that you named, they were politicians and he's not. He's a businessman who takes no prisoners. He's a guy that was a Democrat first, a Hillary supporter, gave money to both Republicans and Democrats and so forth. He was a businessman.
And Kamala Harris.
Yeah, and Kamala Harris. So he just sprinkled money everywhere, and he sprinkled money everywhere because he was a businessman wanting to get things done in New York and around the world and so on and so forth. That boorish and brash and FU kind of bravado is who he is. And because it's who he is, he's not going to change and be a sweet, wonderful politician who says some things in front of you and other things behind your back. When Donald Trump comes in and you hit him, he's the type of guy that'll hit you back. He dealt with Teamsters, he dealt with gangsters, that was his whole world. So you're comparing two different categories of people. One speaks openly and tells you who he is, and the other ones say things behind your back. Hillary called us a basket of deplorables. If somebody hadn't taped it, we wouldn't have known about it. So people talk trash about us behind our back, but the difference between typical politicians and Donald Trump is Donald Trump says it to your face. No hold bar kind of guy. If you hit him, he hits you back, no matter what your color, no matter what your gender,
I need
none of that
us
kind of stuff.
to remember the question.
Yeah. Does it make it better?
Yeah.
Right. And so does
Because
it
all
make,
I'm hearing is justification. I don't want any of these attributes
Yeah. Okay.
in my president.
So
So do you think he's making politics a better place?
I don't think he's having an effect on the politics. And the
You
reason,
don't think
no,
so? After
no,
all of the
after all
the political violence, his own assassination attempts,
no.
families being pulled apart every year since 2015. You don't think he's had much of an effect on
don't
politics?
think- not that much. Because listen, and the reason why is that because Donald Trump will come and go. We know, and here's the assumption. The assumption about Republicans is there's some hard MAGA report followers, right? They embrace the bravado. Then there's some-
Otherwise known as my mother.
And then there's some of us who understands that we're looking at policy. Donald Trump will come. He's came before. You got Biden Harris now, and then you're gonna get Trump again, and then he'll be off the stage, and we'll move on. And so I don't think you'll get anybody else like him. I think he's an anomaly. I think he'll come and go, and so that's why it's important not to bust up your relationships with your families because he will come and go. What we're looking at, and when I go in there to vote for him, I'm going to vote for his policies. I'm not voting for the man. He wasn't my first pick. I mean, and if you talk to lots of Republicans, they'll tell you Donald Trump wasn't the first pick. It was my first pick was Cruz and then Carson. And then when everybody fell by the wayside, Trump was the last man standing.
I think you guys
fine.
need better standards. Also, this is not a debate. I love my mom. I'm really happy that we get to do this. So thank you for being here. Okay, we have to wrap up in a second, Mom. But there's so many good questions, you guys. I wish I could have gotten more. Maybe we'll do part 2. I don't know.
I hope we answered that.
There's a lot of these that we have actually answered that I didn't ask, but a lot of you guys, I think, will feel represented. What would you say? Basically, the caveat is like, she's a black woman with a gay son. What do you say to the people who think that a black conservative voting for Donald Trump is making a decision that is harmful to the future?
So you have to know me. Two things popped into my head as you spoke. My father told me that the ultimate color is green. And it really is all about the money. It really, really is. No matter where you go, it's all about the money. And so with that in mind, I think, first of all, I think of myself as a Christian, then as if there's a duality, if I could do duality, a woman, black woman, right? But I'm Christian first, black woman, black, right? A mom.
Woman, black.
A woman, black, and a mother. And so with that, my job is to teach my child excellence, because what happens is when a child is excellent at what they do, people don't give a rip about their color. What they give a rip about is what you can do. Can you do the job, and can you do it well?
But I guess it's not about raising, right? It's about voting for that excellent black child's accessibility to their potential. No. To your granddaughter's potential, your dark-skinned black granddaughters. Like, how do you so, because it's interesting, the order of Christian black woman mother, but you only really vote with the first one in mind, because the other two would have probably changed your vote because all of your children wish you weren't voting this way.
No.
And a lot of your black community wishes you weren't voting this way. So you're only really voting, which is the question, from that first one.
Okay, yeah, because the first one is really important to me. And what Christ says is whatsoever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not unto men. So because we're to do everything heartily or excellently unto the Lord, I'm going to raise my children to be excellent, no matter what their color are, no matter what their skin. We're all black.
I have to interject because that's not the question. So we are talking about voting,
right?
And voting as a Christian for someone that you have admitted is not a Christian. I don't understand how that is doing it heartily to the Lord.
Kamala is not a Christian, and Biden is not a Christian, and none of them are Christians. So I don't look at that. I'm going to the policy. Of the two policies.
So Jesus was essentially a socialist, right? Like Jesus, I mean, what would you describe making more fish so that everyone can eat, because he didn't want to eat with just him and his friends?
No.
That's literally socialism. He said, if we don't all eat, if we don't all eat, we're not eating.
If a man he says if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. But go ahead.
Fish in the bread? He made sure that there was more fish. He made sure that people kept getting fish.
Right, because what happened was they were out in the wilderness, they were out in the desert, and they were hungry, and it was going. And so he did
love the neighbor like their brother. Right. So like all of these ideas versus.
But he said if a man doesn't work, he doesn't eat. But go ahead and answer.
But Donald Trump has changed so much of these Christ-like tenets. If you're voting from a Christian perspective, wouldn't you say helping immigration, make more sense, and helping people save money to buy food and grocery, like, isn't that more of a Christ-like tenet than?
Yeah,
so those are Kamala Harris's policies.
No,
but they are.
Again, I go back to the policies of the Republican Party: pro-life, pro-taxes, limited government. And so when you have limited government in your life now, the faith-based institutions are free to help people. When you come to our church, we support, I don't even know how many missionaries all over the world. There's a whole sheet that we give money to every single month. We support a Bible college there. We support homes there. We support homes here for unwed mothers, and so on and so forth. So to me, those things need to happen under the guise of freedom, under the guise of Christians going out and sharing the gospel, and then sharing the goodness that God gives us to the.
But what about people who are not Christians? They don't deserve freedom?
They do, and that's why I want them to have the freedom under Donald Trump. Whereas, yes,
So you think banning abortions is limited government?
Yes, limited.
You think banning abortions is limited government?
I think banning abortions.
That's limited government?
No. What's happened? Banning abortion is a state. Again, we're going backwards.
But a state is still what? A government, right? Like it's still state government.
Right.
So limited government is even more reason for there to not be just individually states' rights, because that's actually more control in that small.
No, I think it gets. So we see this. We see the coin in two different places. I think that what happens is when it becomes a states' rights issue, it gives the voice to the people.
But not all the people.
So then the other people can be free to do whatever they want to do, free of association. If you don't like it there, if you want to cross state lines to get an abortion, fine. If you want to stay, but you're taking away the voice of the majority for the minority.
But that voice is saying that they want people to not do what they won't do. Right, that voice is the voice.
So then that person is free to then go to either a neighboring state or not get an abortion to look at some other.
Right. And I guess none of that is freedom.
But then that person needs to then know how to take. They need to make different choices, or they learn how to different choices before you lay down with somebody. I think
you should do whatever the fuck you want to do, and not have people who do not know you making decisions for your body. I think you can fuck whoever you want to fuck, do whatever you want to do, and you should not have some Christian homemaker who does not know you from Adam making decisions about your body because she got into an MLM and recruited a bunch of her friends to vote the same way as her. I do not think that is okay. I do not think that is freedom, and I think we need to be very clear and understand that is not freedom, and you guys are being gaslit into thinking that it is, because it's not. That is not limited government. That is actually far too much inclusion from government from men. That was another question. Do you feel comfortable with men making these decisions on women's bodies?
We have the Supreme Court, right? The Supreme Court looked at
We're talking states' rights. There are 3 female governors?
Yeah. So there might be 3 governors, but then they put the vote to the people, and so then the people get to vote. I'm like I said, we're looking at the same coin, 2 sides of the same coin. And so to me, you think it's taking away freedoms. I think that it's giving people a voice. And so we're just gonna have to agree to disagree.
And this is why we agree to disagree. Where would you draw the line for each other that would cause us to go no contact?
I just want to say that I appreciate us being able to talk about it. And I just want to say to you all, we're discussing stuff that are hot button issues, and you may have it with your parent or, a MAGA person or whatever, and be careful to talk to the person and try to hear what they have to say. So I want to hear what he has to say. And then you can't back off and not be willing to say, I'm wrong or I don't know. I need to learn more about it. I think that what's happening in America is that because we have these hot button issues that make us collide and make us like this.
A lot of pride and ego.
Right. And this happens with me and my mother, not on politics, but on other things. Me and my mother had a kind of a contentious relationship. And so, and everybody knows, I can't tell you specifically when it happens, but when it's going to ratchet up, when you hear and then you're at the point of no return, and now you're arguing with one another. So what you have to do is you have to then hear the voice and go into your talking with love and a sense of grace. A sense of, I'm not here to attack you. And if we're going to talk about this, hear me and let me hear you. Because what I see and hear is that people don't do that. People just go into it to get their point across, and I'm right, and I'm this, and I'm that, and darn it, you're going to listen to me.
I have a very limited amount of time with my parents on this earth, and I am a wild child. I've kind of had my no contact time, we've kind of gone through our phases of not talking already. And I think one thing that was a gift about being such a interesting teenager, young adult, is that I think any niceties or sort of required, I don't want to say this in the wrong way, but there was this era of hierarchical respect that I think how often we fought with each other sort of evaded, because we got to a place where we were family members more than we were mom, son. We really both made mistakes as parent and child. And I think being able to recover the relationship after both of us hurt each other allowed there to be a real freedom to where I stopped taking her autonomy personally, and I stopped apologizing for mine. I was I curse. Who taught me how to curse? My mom from the fucking Bronx taught me how to curse. I'm not gonna pretend that she didn't teach me how to curse. She puts on this good girl Christian shit, but she's a bad girl from the Bronx, okay? If you wanna really know Renee, that's why she's looking away from the camera, because she knows. So there's this understanding now that I think actually allows us to be closer to where I'm not as affected by my parents and I disagreeing. Because for me, at the end of the day, they're my parents.
I know, people think that my positions are
extreme,
or hard, whatever. But yeah.
But what? Go.
But
This is your platform, girl.
Yeah.
Use my mic.
It is what it is.
I'm not going to change her mind.
No.
And I think that's the deal with this.
Yeah.
I do not, and I've said this a time again, if you cannot tell, I don't agree with her. Like, I don't agree with her.
And I don't agree with him
and we don't have to, right? Like, and I think that there's a deeper relationship than just how we vote. I think my mom has hurt me in ways deeper than who she votes for. And I think I have as well. I think we've hurt. I think honestly,
but we've made amends, and so with that, we've done forgiveness.
Right.
We've done reconciliation. We've done humility and said, "I'm sorry."
Right.
And I think that those things are important because, again, like I said earlier, this too shall. This whole Trump thing. He's going to come. He's going to go. After this election, either we'll see him for 4 more years or we won't. If we get him for 4 more years, fine. After that, he's gone off the scene. But where will you sit with your family?
Right. So yeah, guys, there's no takeaway. There's no button with this. I love my mom. My mom loves me.
I love my son. My son loves me.
I'll see you guys in the next one.
All right.
Mwah.
Bye.
Mom, thank you for coming on.
I love you.